Hi, friends. It's Diane here with Peter Mann. We're going to talk about neurodivergence in the workplace. Neurodivergence in the workplace because it's part of Peter's life in a really powerful and meaningful way. Peter is an entrepreneur. He owns his own companies in Virginia, and he is neurodivergent. Yeah, in the real sense of the word, not just throwing the word around for kicks. And he has had to overcome a lot of challenges and obstacles, and yet he maintains a level of success that is very inspiring. So Peter's taking time out of his busy day today to share with us some of his life, some of his work, and maybe tips for some of us who think maybe something might be off, or maybe that we're weird or quirky, and what to do with that. So Peter, thank you so much for coming on Someone Gets Me today with me. I'm looking forward to this conversation because there's so many nuances. So welcome.
All right. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
And so you're in Virginia, and like we were talking about before we started recording, I have a lot of friends there. And so what is your favorite thing about living in Virginia? What do you love about it there the most?
Wow. Yeah. So I'm in Southwest Virginia near Virginia Tech. And so I really like the mountains and it's just really clean. I lived in Austin for 20 years and while it was fast paced and fun and, a lot of tech companies, there's also a lot of traffic and there's like no traffic here. And so it's just kind of nice. Like you get in your car to go somewhere and you know exactly how long it's going to take to get there. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just small things like that and just nature and, quietness. It just is just really appealing.
Yes, me too. I just moved recently from the Tampa Bay area of Florida, where crazy traffic, craziness, getting more and more angry and weird and crazy. And I was raised in Florida, so I never thought I wouldn't live there. And now I live outside of Winston-Salem, where I know how long it's going to take me to get everywhere. and it's like all the roads are just nice.
Yeah.
Wow, it was like a huge, refreshing culture shock for me.
Yeah, I really like it. It's, there's actual infrastructure built out for the amount of people that live here. and it's, everyone's friendly and, I've lived in, several different places, but this feels like home. So we really enjoy it.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that. So give everybody a little bit of a flavor of your journey. Like you grew up thinking there was something wrong with you or something was off. And then how did all of this stuff unfold? Just like the Cliff Note version that you realize that neurodivergence even a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I always knew I was different. I just remember as a child being told, you need to make eye contact. And it's like, I just couldn't, it was about my brain shutting down, or I would just not acknowledge neighbors that would say hi, and I'd be somewhat in my head, and constantly being told that I was doing things wrong, and I was never really thought anything was wrong with me, just that I was different, and to me other people were weird. so fast forward until the last couple of years, my wife was watching the CBS morning show, and they profiled a woman who's autistic and works for the government. And she was describing her hyper-focused abilities and her abilities to see patterns or to see, details and changes. And she's like, "Oh, you need to watch this." And I watched it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." And that kind of put me on a journey of, it eventually led to actually the diagnosis for, autism. And it just, for me, I think it's natural just to go back and just relive all the events of your life and see it through a completely different lens. Right. And have just this understanding. It's like, oh, that's why, this situation. And so for me, it was pretty life-changing. And, I'm proud to say I'm autistic. I don't have any reservations. I know there's a pretty big stigma to it, but I'm just trying to speak out and speak for it and, really just raise awareness, so life can be better. A lot of these challenges that we have are imposed by society, and it's, in my opinion, needless in a lot of cases. And it just makes life harder than it really should be.
Right. I totally agree. So how did you feel when you were watching that show and you're like, oh my God, that's me? What kind of feelings did you have?
It was just this. I mean, I've always thought I was a pretty self-aware person, and
Mhm.
human behavior has always been an interest of mine, just because I've always thought that people are different. I knew as a little kid that adults don't always know what they're talking about. So it just
That's a
and
truth.
and so um, it was just this. Everything just came into focus. I don't really know um, more. It was just a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it kind of culminated in when I, was meeting with the woman that did my diagnosis, when she, finally disclosed it after all the stuff that we went through in the process. And it was just, and she goes, "What do you have to say?" And I was just like, this is a lot. Like, that's all I could come up with. It was just, it's overwhelming, I guess, is because it's just, years and decades of experiences that you're just reprocessing.
Right.
It's in it, goes on for a while. It's like, and then it's like, who even am I? Right. Like, I've been masking all this time. It's like, who's the real me? It's
Right.
this whole like discovery process.
Right. It's like getting to know yourself again, but for the second time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were in the military, and I'm really curious about how, now that you know your diagnosis and you understand some of your own processing things, how did the autism you didn't know you have affect you in the military? How did all of that work? Because my understanding, and a lot of people who have neurodivergence, is that the IQ tends to be higher. There's giftedness going on. You can see things other people can't see. I mean, you have this great company. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All of these things, these gifts that you bring to the table. So, how did that affect your military service?
Yeah. So I went to college on a Navy ROTC scholarship, and so then I was required to serve 4 years as an officer in the Navy, which is what I did. Part of it, I think, is a little bit. There's some situations where I don't know if this is being autistic or just being young, but I was like a little bit naive to not realize that we may go to war. That's what happened. The first Gulf War, that we, were sent to the Middle East, and I was the gunnery officer, and, I really did well because I was, calm under pressure, and dialed into what was going on, in the, communication, or the, kind of the room where all the, radars and the weapon systems. And my boss, who is in charge of, everything there, was super emotional. And the captain's like, it essentially just put me in charge sometimes because he couldn't focus, and it was like, this is not a time to be emotional, like when
Right, exactly.
when you're in a war zone. So from that perspective, I was just like, my range of emotions are, a narrower range than I think the typical person has. And so it was really well suited for that. Where I struggled was the schedule was really difficult. Like, the sleep patterns weren't normal or natural. And so for me, it was really difficult from the sleep standpoint, because I wasn't getting a regular 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. Some nights it was 3 hours, and some nights it was 4 hours. And then at best it was 6. And I was just always exhausted. And I was like, I can't do this as a career. It's one of the things that I've identified in terms of just like health and well-being is getting proper sleep. Otherwise, I kind of tend to do more of a shutdown. It requires a lot of energy to, keep going if I don't get proper sleep.
Right. Yeah. You notice it a lot more. I know if I don't get my sleep, I can go for a short period with a weird schedule and things like that, but it takes its toll very rapidly.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And it was funny because my mother was, she's, extroverted, and she was always concerned about me as a child, and always underestimated. And she didn't want me to get out of the military because she was concerned I wouldn't be able to get as good of a job in the outside world because I was different. and it's just kind of amazing now to everyone's just a bit baffled. Like, how are you doing so well? Because you struggled so much when I was a kid. And it's like now it all makes sense. But, at the time I was like, I can't, as much as there's aspects of the military that I enjoyed, it's like physically, I can't operate on this little sleep. My body and brain just doesn't work right.
It goes tilt like the old pinball machines, and that's it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you get out of the military, and have you always been an entrepreneur and doing your company, or did you try to work for somebody else, or how did the career start to go from there?
Yeah, so my degrees are statistics and industrial engineering, and so I had never taken a business class in my life. And when I got out, I didn't really have the confidence that I didn't even know what to do to run a business. I've never really been in a business before, and so I spent probably 10 years, most of it working for 2 Fortune 100 tech companies, and that's really on the job MBA type experience came in. And then when the .com bubble burst in the early 2000s, that was my push to go off and start something. And so I started an e-commerce business in 2002 or 2003 with another guy, and ran that for 7 years, and then sold that business to start, the current business, Oransi, that I'm running right now.
That's really cool. I love that in your description of your current business, which I want you to tell everybody about because I think it's really cool, that one of the descriptors that you use is that it's intuitive. That the work you do is intuitive, and I think that is a really amazing descriptor. So I want to share a little bit about how this company came to be born and what you love about it. Like, how come it turns you on every day and you get up?
Yeah. So yeah, the business has evolved. So I started it as I wanted to create a brand, really focused on indoor air quality. And this was kind of stemmed from my son, who is asthmatic. And I just remember him as an infant really struggling to breathe, like some days just changing colors. I'm like, this isn't good. It was frightening. And and I was like, there's got to be a better way. And there were some products on the market, but I kind of felt like there was an opportunity to do something better. And so that's really where it started. And COVID really kind of blew things up with air quality really became
right.
The awareness really was raised, and in that process I met some folks here in the US that were in the motor business. And, we merged with a company called Avimor, a motor technology company, in the summer of 2021. So, technically, instead of saying we're an air purifier company, I say we're a motor technology company. And we're in the process of restoring our manufacturing back to the US because we figured out, part of it's based on the motor technology, but part of it's based on how we design products that we can, really make these things in the US with better performance and lower price than the Chinese, which to me is pretty exciting because I grew up in an area where, in the 80s and 90s, jobs were just lost to overseas. And the fact that we can, bring it back and, leverage this technology, not just for air purifiers, but really anything that uses an electric motor, we theoretically can make a product for. And so I was like, wow, there's just so many options for where we can go. And I think the timing is really great because of this whole clean energy and the shift from fossil fuels to electrification. And we have the engine that can run a lot of these products. And so I think we're really well positioned. And it at this point really just comes down to how well can we execute. But for me, it's, air quality was kind of an obvious thing for me just because my son was asthmatic, but, it wasn't for most people until COVID hit. And then it becomes like, oh yeah, this is really important. we need to do something about this.
Well, you're reminding me of all all the press and all the information I've read over the years about like sick building syndrome, and how I saw an article recently how in most homes their inside air quality is worse than the outside air quality, even if they're living in a polluted area and things like that. And asthma and breathing things are very common in gifted people and in high intelligence people. It's part of the brain development differences, I imagine. And so I think that's a really inspiring place that you started. Like, you look at your son like, this can't be, I have to solve a problem. And then you took all of your gifts and ability and created something amazing that now is expanding even bigger. And I just love the feel of that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm passionate about. And, I kind of, it's rewarding because we see comments from people how it impacts their lives for the better. And, I think just doing good is, it makes it showing up to work every day. And, work is pretty much all I do. It's kind of like my special interest. It's where I get my, dopamine or my, good chemicals from. And, if you can improve the lives of someone else, to me, I think that's what it's about. It's just so rewarding to do that, and just really grateful that to have this opportunity.
Right, and I'm sitting here really grateful that you have all these skills that nobody really knew that you had when you were younger, that looked difficult, that are now creating something really powerful and beneficial, not just for your family, but for lots of people. Like, it's kind of one of those things that when you were a little kid, people probably would have looked at you like your mom did and said, oh, it's going to be really hard on you. And then you end up landing someplace that it's those unique differences in you, those neurodivergent things. My belief is that everyone's neurodivergent in the sense that no two systems are made the same. So all of us have something that's really powerful if we would say yes to it. And I'm really excited that you've been saying yes to it.
Yeah, I would say, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And when you're different, people tend to pounce on your weaknesses and ignore your strengths. And you really need to play to your strengths. And, no one's good at everything. But I think it's figuring out who you are, what you like to do, what you're good at, and just going all in on that. And that's essentially what I've done. I know there's areas where I'm really weak, and I don't beat myself up over that. I'm just like, that's not the type of person I am. I'm good at, these three things, and that's all I do. It's, it's like playing the hits. It's like, you don't want to, like, you go to a concert, what is it? LCD sound system, they have shut up and play the hits. It's like, yeah, just keep playing to the hits, and focus on your strengths and just get even better at it. Because if I focused all of my weaknesses, maybe at best I could be average, but average isn't good enough. And so and don't beat yourself up over the weaknesses, because it's just life's too short to be dragged down. And there's enough people that say negative things. And to me, it's, it's not healthy to have them, just kind of just pull you down to, from my perspective, it's pull you down to their level. It's like, no.
I agree with you. Yeah. I'm listening to you going, yep, I agree. Yeah. So what do you do for fun? What do you do for enjoyment?
Yeah, this is something so my wife's neurotypical, and it's kind of, this was something she's like, you have no hobbies. And it's like all I do is think about like work things or marketing, or, this is, something we could do with a product, or, and so for me, I like to, go on walks, or, jog, or basketball games, and stuff like that is kind of what we do. Some travel, although since COVID, it's really haven't done a lot of that. But for the most part, I have very few hobbies, and interests, which I think, is pretty common amongst autistic folks. I just have like a few small special interests and go super deep on those. And I kind of don't know anything about anything else.
Right, exactly. So what do you go deep on? What rabbit holes do you enjoy going down when you're dialing into something that, that
So for me, I just like human behavior and marketing, and, people aren't rational, and it's just fascinating to me just to kind of look at, what people, connect to, and, there's so much change taking place right now with AI and social media. And, used to be people listen to the radio, and then, TV was a big thing. And now it's like everyone's on their phone. And there's just like the evolution of change, and just, just kind of just, being part of it. Cause I think it's a pretty, crazy time right now with, from the technology standpoint, that, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't think there was a lot of change, taking place then, but in these last, 20 years, it's been phenomenal to, see all that and be a part of it. So,
yeah, I think the change is picking up.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and where's it going, and what is AI going to do to things? Is
right. And then I think about, not only is what AI going to do, but what are the humans going to do in response to that, and in response to each other? Because some people are loving AI and other people aren't so much, and other people are skeptical. And so there's all these varied human responses, behaviorally and emotionally as well. So it's quite interesting.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think anyone knows where it's going. There's fears out there because it could, do some bad things, but, it's also, can maybe, really help in other ways. And so, yeah, I don't think I think if anyone knows where it's going, I don't think they know what they're talking about, because it's too new.
Oh, I love it. So if somebody's listening here and they're finding out that maybe they have autism or they're neurodivergent in a way, and they're going through that aha moment like you have, that was overwhelming, what kind of words of inspiration would you give somebody who's on that kind of journey of trying to figure out more about who they are?
Yeah, for me, my perspective is like, if you're autistic, is just, we're just different. There's nothing like wrong with us. I think in society, we're kind of viewed as a defective person. The language that's used, the medical model calls it a disorder. And it's just like, to me, it's like if you're left-handed or right-handed, and a left-handed person's not a defective right-handed person, they're just left-handed. And so much in life is about awareness and expectations. At least that's from my simple mind, how I've distilled it down to, and having awareness for how you are and how society is, and then setting proper expectations around things. And, often if you set really high expectations, to me, it seems like you're setting yourselves up almost to be disappointed if the bar is set so high. And so, kind of what's realistic. And for me, it's like, what can I do to be my best self is really important, and having awareness for what it takes for me to be successful and to feel good and to have energy, manage anxiety, which is a lot of what autism is, at least for me. And I think for a lot of other folks. And, but, at the end of the day, it's just, to me, it's just part of, natural part of biodiversity, and just, that's how I see it. And I think that's how a lot of other autistic folks see it. We don't really see ourselves as a person with autism. We see ourselves as autistic adults. For me, the other thing I found is terrible as Twitter can be, there's actually a pretty good autistic community on Twitter, of folks who chat and share stories and information. And it really kind of lives up to like the ideals of what a positive platform can be. And so like, if you get into political and some of the other stuff, it's a bit of a mess. But within the autistic community, there's, I learned from other people, and folks share their experiences, or you can throw something out and people will contribute their thoughts or their experiences. And to me, that's been really helpful, because you're not like on an island by yourself. You can actually it's still social media, but you're still connected with people who kind of get you. And what I found is the therapists who happen to be autistic themselves, or obviously have the lived experience, have the best insights. And you find some of these people on the social media platforms who are sharing their perspectives. And to me, that's just been super helpful in terms of just navigating all this and kind of really coming to the realization in raising my awareness for autism. Because, if you went back a few years, I really couldn't tell you a lot about autism, even though I was autistic.
Right.
Yeah.
You could say what your life experience was, but not much more than that. And it annoys me when I hear the pathologizing of somebody's experience, because, calling autism a disorder or neurodivergent people are somehow the difference makes them less than or something, because I totally disagree with that whole concept in our culture. And what I see is that people that have unique, really amazing qualities, and some of them could be autism related and some of them not, have like a unique calling in the world. There's a reason why you and other people were born, whatever the labels are or aren't, in order to bring something beautiful to the world. And so when we look at your life and the fact that you have brought beautiful things to the world because you used your strengths, that's what really matters. It's about following that strength and letting it bloom in a way that really serves yourself and others. And so I think you're a really good example for people. Like if you're out there listening and you're beating yourself up, or worse, you're pathologizing yourself and making yourself sick or less than, it's time to start embracing who you are in a proper, good, healthy way, and love on yourself a little bit and have compassion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it kind of breeds so much of this is confidence and self-esteem. And, for me, I know, like, if I'm having a shutdown or something's off, like I'm operating at like 10-15%. It's a real struggle. But if I'm on, like I am on, and I just kind of, feel like I can compete with anybody or really accomplish everything I'm setting out to do. And so for me, it's around just managing, self-health, I guess, or, and having awareness as to what it takes to get to that kind of place, the healthy place, because it's so, to me, it's so important. Like I can't really function well if I'm not, if I'm, don't have the confidence and just not, my best self.
Right. Taking care of yourself in order to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the most memorable food you've ever eaten? Like in your whole life? Like when you look back and go, oh my God, that was something either really great or really awful, but like what pops in your mind?
Yeah, part of like autism is they call sameness, which is basically we eat like the same things over and over again. Well, I'll give maybe two examples. One is, this is an example of like, so from kindergarten through 12th grade, I had peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch every day and an apple. I had the same thing. And then on Fridays, I grew up in New York, and we had a like Catholic influence. So we always had fish on Fridays. And so it was like a fillet of fish. And I remember in 4th grade, we had a substitute teacher, and instead of marking down almost everyone getting fillet of fish, she marked us all down as getting the egg salad sandwiches. And to me, it was like, what a colossal mistake. Like who, and I think it was because like I had an expectation for like what it was, because we always get fish on Fridays, and this lady just made a mistake and got the order wrong. But I was like, it just struck me as like, I was speechless. Like it just like ruined. It was devastating to me. And it wasn't even like I didn't like eggs. It was just it was, part of like the routine or part of and then it got changed up, and it's like, holy cow, did that hit me hard. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. And so to me, that was like probably the most memorable because it was unexpected and triggering. And, this was kind of probably late 70s. And I don't think, in schools, they were set up to handle autism. They weren't set up to handle me. I got no kind of, I wasn't treated differently than anyone else. And it was just, but for me, that was probably my most memorable meal because it was, it was not expected.
Oh, I can tell. You're telling the story, and I'm going, "Oh my gosh!" I could feel it. Like, oh no, It's like I had this image of one time I forget, I was in some restaurant with somebody, and it was a similar kind of thing. I thought we were getting this food, and something completely different came, and my taste buds were ready for this, and then this came, and I'm like, "Oh no!" But I can only imagine being a kid in school, like
did not handle it well.
No. Especially fish to egg salad. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It was like a fillet of fish. I mean, it was really good. It was like, oh.
Oh, my word, my word, my word. Okay, so I only have a couple more questions, but I first wanted to ask you if there's anything on your mind that you wanted to share, on your heart that you wanted to share on the show today that I didn't ask about or we didn't talk about, that before we end, I want to make sure you have a chance to share what's important to you that you would like to say.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I did last year is I put a LinkedIn post out where I was willing to, do video meetings with, a number of autistic folks to help them either navigate the hiring process or, potentially move up in their position. Because for me, while I kind of have done okay in interviews, I worked at two large companies, but I got to middle management level, and I kind of saw I wasn't going to go any further because it requires more like politics, I guess, versus actually like doing the job. And so, and what I found is, when I look at the statistics, the, autistic unemployment rate is just crazy high, as much as 85% in some reports. So most autistic folks are unemployed. And I think a lot of it is the hiring process is set up to exploit weaknesses, and it's not set up to really hire an autistic person. We just fail in the process. We don't make proper eye contact. The body language is off from what they expect. The questions that are asked can be really difficult to answer. And so I've really been and what I found is it's not so much that I think the autistic person's the problem. It's the neurotypical person in the hiring process just doesn't have awareness that their hiring practices are not inclusive, and it's excluding or discriminatory. And so I'm really just trying to speak out to the autistic folks. Keep doing what you're doing and keep showing up, but for the neurotypicals, we need to really change the hiring process. And I was chatting with a colleague recently, and she said that I think it was her husband went for an interview, and they provided like a sheet that had like, this is when you show up, this is what you wear, this is your schedule, this is who you're meeting with, these are the questions we're going to ask you in the interview, so you can show up prepared. And are any accommodations needed for this process to make it successful for you? I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is how it should be at every company, and it's not. We're in this old school, it's set up really. If you're a social extrovert, you do great in these interviews, or your persuasion comes across. But if you're not wired that way, the interview process is not set up for us. And so anyways, I just try and bring that up because it's not a lot of work, and there's almost no cost in changing it. But it's I think there's just so much that needs to be done there, because autistic unemployment rates are significantly higher than they should be. It shouldn't be that much different than the general population. We're at the other end of the extreme.
Right. I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you brought that up. And so your LinkedIn link is going to be in the show notes. So if you're neurotypical and you're not really sure what to do from here and it matters to you, then contact Peter. And if you're somebody who's autistic or struggling or not sure you're autistic, but you have the same kind of questions, I suggest that you go on LinkedIn and connect with Peter in some way, shape, or form and see how that kind of collaboration can help. Because your point about the fact that neurotypical people have as much or more responsibility in all of this as the people who have the diagnosis of autism or the people who are autistic who don't know it yet. All of that is the practices in so many places are antiquated. They're old. They exclude whether they know it or not. And sometimes people think they're doing the right thing, but they haven't expanded enough to realize that their blind spots are creating issues. So you have a great resource in Peter. And so find him on LinkedIn and reach out to him and make sure that you get your needs met and have him answer your questions or see how he can direct you, because he obviously has knowledge about this. So I have one final question for you. That's one of my favorite questions to ask. And and that is, if we're going to put a billboard up that the whole world is going to see with Peter Mann's inspirational quote on it, what would you want the whole world to see on that billboard?
Yeah, this is so one is I tend to not like to draw attention to myself. I would never have a billboard, but I would say, I mean, this is more work oriented. Is, you know, Steve Jobs had this quote: "The best ideas should win," and to me, that's a very autistic viewpoint. And it's not, you know, this is the way we've always done things, or this is the senior person in the room, or it's like the best ideas should win. It doesn't matter who it comes from. You know, the ideas should stand for themselves. And, you know, and I think that's part of, you know, if you really want to drive diversity and inclusion and, you know, solve difficult problems, you really need to have that kind of a mindset. And so, I mean, I guess that's what I would say.
Perfect. I love that. I love it. And it so totally goes with how you do the world. So I want to thank you, Peter, for taking all this time out of your busy day in your life to hang out with us here on Someone Gets Me, because what a great conversation. I am really enjoyed my time with you. And so thank you. And remember, everybody, keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You are here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and let your ideas shine. Be who you're meant to be. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.